today being the kind of a sociocultural interaction through study of intellectuals, activists, travelogues, and so on. And today being focused on the border, the 62 experience, so that's how the 2 days were structured. So you reflect on these two themes, reflect on the kind of advance we see in our researches and weaknesses that we see in our researches and deliberations, which will help us to find new methodological, theoretical ways of moving forward in academic research, which we believe always has policy and practical implications. So it's now open. Yes, Martha.
I think this has been one of the really good seminars which I've attended recently. And I do think that India-China studies really has advanced a lot in the last few years. I mean, I can see much more maturity in terms of themes, in terms of approaches, in terms of collaboration. And I think this seminar, though it's short, it's a 1.5-day seminar, it reflected some of that. So one thing which I really liked about this seminar is this looking at the 20th century as a whole. The great 1949 or 47 divide was really nicely spanned, I think. And I think this is the way you have to look at it, because really, India-China relations really started acquiring a certain momentum in the beginning of the 20th century. And there were, so we really need to look at it from then, and then not assume it kind of stopped midway through the century, but it has developed in different ways. And I think so that's one thing I really appreciated. The other thing is that we are consciously, I think, overcoming this, friendship paradigm, which I've always fought against. If we feel bound to be diplomats when we are actually scholars, and we want to see only what is friendly about India-China relations, we won't understand the thing. And nor will we contribute to even any resolution of problems as scholars. So if we look from the beginning of the 20th century, of course this seminar we didn't really go beyond the 60s. Of course it continues. But if we look at the period from the beginning of 20th century, we'll see that there's a lot of complexity to the relationship. Lot of highs and lows, lots of black and white grays. And I think, this is the real thing that should be brought out, the complexity of the relationship. At the same time, it's something that cannot be broken off. I mean, neither history nor geography allow India and China to sort of ignore each other. So I think that has come through very well in this seminar. Today's sessions was so interesting, I've forgotten yesterday's sessions, including the one I have participated. So right now, I can only think of today, but maybe it will come back and others will remember. But something, looking at just today was dominated by 62, but the first session the real interesting thing is looking at archival, really trying to go beyond the established positions and trying to really find the documents, find new documents, documents that have not been used. And I think that, really we should collaborate on archival work. It's not possible, one person to go around the world, hopping and collecting everything. I think now the times don't allow everything speeded up so much. So I think the only way we have to move forward is that we work collaboratively, and people where they are or they're near certain archives, they should try to bring those to light, and then we should have discussions. And there is, I can see one little problem, which is of one-sided archival research. This is not any individual scholar's fault. It is to do with the whole structure of archives. They're so hard to access, and then some places they're closed. Open and closed. Now you can, in India it's like close. So we can't get anywhere with, looking at the Indian archives for 62. And in case of China also, I think they open and then they're closed, and so there is some kind of fluctuation there. So. Even though archives are a very good source, and looking at a document can definitely, is better than just speculating from thin air or starting from your own prejudices. Still, documents also have to be looked at cautiously, and they have to be assessed for what they are. And if you look at only one type of documents, you will, even if it's archival research, you will come maybe to incomplete conclusions. So I think this is some problem we have to address. But in the second session, of today, what I really appreciated, and I hadn't thought of this before, but the ideas come only from this, which is that instead of, focusing only on 62, and then, usually we're looking at whose position was right or wrong, and maybe how we can resolve it. Using 62 as an angle from which to understand not only developments within India, within China, within the Asian region, and even globally. The whole Cold War looked at through, 62, the border dispute. I think, this is I feel that both the papers opened this way of looking at things. So instead of seeing 62 as the some be-all and end-all, and something which we get narrower and narrower in our focus, it can also be used to kind of give us another perspective on larger development. So I think with that, I will stop.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. I'd like to make a correction to a comment I made yesterday, lest everybody not go away with something wrong that I said yesterday, and one small comment. I apologize to Professor Kamalshil. No, the comment I made yesterday, I would like to correct because I went home and researched it. This is regarding Thakur Gadadhar Singh's memoirs or travelogue and my comment on it. I was speaking from the basis of a knowledge that 2 battalions of our Rajput regiment were actually sent to China, and I found when I went back home is that it was the 1st battalion and the 3rd battalion, as they are known now. The Indian Army underwent title changes and numbering system changes in 1903 thereafter, and again in 1922. So part of that caused the confusion in my mind because of a coincidence. The 1st battalion was the one that I assumed was the one that was being referred to, but it wasn't that. It was actually the 3rd battalion. Now the funny thing about the numbering systems then, or the changes then, was what then became the 1st Battalion, 7th Rajput Regiment in 1922. Eventually became 1st Battalion, the Guard, 4th Battalion, the Guard. So that's a Rajput Regiment or 7th Battalion at the time. So the recording is as correctly recorded by you, and of course, obviously by the author. But you will find more on it, not in the history of the Brigade of Guards, but in the history books of the Rajput Regiment, but under 3rd Battalion Rajput Regiment. So in case you wish to take it forward, look for 3rd Battalion Rajput Regiment's history, and you will find mention of the actions of that particular unit. On the comments, very briefly, it was Dr. Isabel Jackson who talked about the Sikh policemen at the various places where the British had possessions in the colonial era. And I just wanted to point out, though I've told you personally, is that there were not only Sikh policemen, there were Gurkha police, all military police in places including in Singapore. And this policy was within India as well, within British India. There were, for example, Pathan police. The Calcutta police had a largely predominant recruitment of tall, for the same reasons, Pathans from the Northwest Frontier province, the Pashtun-speaking area, now in Pakistan. So, there were examples of other communities being used by the British as so-called impartial policemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Steve.
I wanted to pick up on what Matabay was just saying about just saying, wow, and about archives and so on. And that led me to think about one area. I think that we've discussed Chinese materials, Indian material, British, and to some degree American came out today, US and so on. And there have been references back and forth. I made a little bit also in my paper, which is not quite the same as today's. But anyway, my point is that the Soviet, the archives in Moscow, seems a kind of lacuna, an area that it might be quite possible to learn much more about what Moscow was, the role they were playing. You mentioned Khrushchev talking to the Chinese. When was that? 59, I think. Anyway, and there is some memoir literature in Chinese about this, but mining of the Russian archives, that's also an open and closed question, I think. I'm not an expert on that, but I was wondering if there's somebody in this room who has some more background. Also for Professor Meng, I remember I've spent some time with Liu Jin, a lady who has spent many years in Moscow with looking at Russian-Chinese relations. You know who I mean? Liu Jin, right? Wuhan, yeah, at the Jindaiso, right? An old lady, she's now in her 70s. She and her husband were in Moscow for a couple of years, and I think Yang Guiseng has used their material, but maybe Yang Guiseng, I don't know. Anyway, I'm wondering though if there are Indian scholars who have explored in more detail the Soviet position through all of this, mediating, non-mediating, and so on. Seems like that's a big question that we don't know enough about, but might be possible to learn more about.
Thank you. Yes, Rapai, and then
I will take from where Steve was telling. It is one, I agree with Madhavi that it was an interesting seminar for various different reasons. That is one thing. Secondly, I think the Cold War History Project, that has given some material relating to this. I think where at least I read about some of the, I don't know if it is directly linked, but some of the discussions going on the Chinese leadership and the Russian leadership. So that partly it is on the net. But I don't know, I think there are certainly more stuff now translated into English, but it may be available. Then about, I think I have one request to Professor Meng, that I think if you can at least point out to us that what is the open material available on the digitized format or on the net, which is freely accessible to anybody. I think then we can request our institute to look at that and made available to the various researchers. Because those things. And apart from that, I think apart from the archival material, I would also like to request you that the people who are involved in the India-China decision making at that point, I think some of them have written, we know some of them, but if their memoirs are out and it is open books, I think certainly we can take a look at that. That will be add to the value that the topics we are discussing. Then finally, before the lunch, I tried to just point out, because that was mainly due to the question of Anand and Debashish Chaudhary. We have to see that context because the first elected government of Kerala by a communist EMS Namboodirippan, it was dismissed, and for that there was a lot of role played by the American capitalism and conservative elements in India as well. So this is a follow-up on that. At least I have seen some writings from an American who was posted in Madras at that consulate at that point. He writes that there is no point in using the right-wing people to kill the communist movement in India. So it is better to use the extreme left elements, and they funded some of that too. So I think that given a fillip to the Naxalite movements which followed later on. So some of these groups were deliberately developed and tried to defame the left movement in India. I think this just for the input. Thank you.
Well, okay. Rani, next.
Just several words about the archive things. About the collaboration of archival work. Yes, Soviet archives definitely the one to go. And I'm thinking of former socialist camp, like Central Eastern European countries, because I know Professor Shen Zhihua also find a lot of interesting things on Korean Peninsula from the former Soviet bloc archives. Because sometimes we might ignore that the officials and diplomats and also the top from the Soviet side would inform or even communicate with their Soviet camp partners. And the very important thing is the archives in all these countries now are completely open, and is available online. Yeah, and this is definitely like worthy of a try to do that, to find what type of topics we can define. Either China relevant or Sino-Indian relevant. Must be a seed of knowledge, and that's why.
Yes. Okay. Then.
I'll mention few words about Tawang area. This is because I have lived in that area for about 2 years while I was in army, and I also have written a monograph on Tawang Mompas, 120-page monograph. As known to everyone, the Tawang Mompas, which spread from Jimithan, the western part of Kameng district, to eastern part, that is Mago, and other side of Tawangchu. They are following devotedly His Holiness Dalai Lama, the Tibetan Buddhism. Every house has a photograph of His Holiness Dalai Lama, and almost every person carries with him a photograph of His Holiness. But their dress, customs, and economics and language is more akin to Bhutan than to Tibetan. there is lot of difference between Tibetan way of living and Hmong, which is a monastery across the border, and in turn, part of the taxes were also going to Dripim monastery in Lhasa area. But in 1951, when Assam Rifles occupied that area, the people who were Tibetans who were collecting taxes on behalf of Sona Jong, they were removed from that area by Assam Rifles. And the local did not resent at all when the tax collectors had gone across the border. They were pushed across the border. There was no protest by Tawang people. This I thought I share with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that one? No. Okay. Professor Kamal. Okay. Professor Man.
I try to speak in English. As for the archives, for myself, I began this work from the 1998. But before 2005, the work is slow because myself can do much work. But after 2005, our institute and the CAS support me and my group. And I have 4 opportunities to UK. And every day I take my camera to photograph the archives. And even I work more than 10 hours in the archive. So I think that's very important to do this work. For example, there are very different conclusions and ideas on the same topic from different scholars, not only from the different countries, but also in the same country. I think the most important reason is the scholar lacked the archives from different sources. Even regarding the same archive, different scholars can get different conclusions. So I think my work is hard, but I am happy. Until now, we have gathered more than 6,000 pages of UK archives about the Sino-Indian relations, including the relations between China and other Southern Asian countries. And our work is continuing. And I think after 5 years later, our data bank maybe support the scholars from different countries to our institute. But I think it was difficult to open in the web because we have been spending much more money, and many of the papers have the copyrights, including the foreign ministry and the military. So even 5 years later, maybe any archives are open to everyone. But I think I can choose several levels of the archive to different people. For example, the scholars can read any some levels, and the ordinary people can read less than scholars. That's my own plan. I think the conference is a hope for our future cooperation. For example, before Miss Zhu Dandan and I getting my visa, someone told me, perhaps you would be refused by the embassy because the Indians are sensitive to Chinese. So, but when we came here, both of us felt very comfortable. We can exchange freely and speak frankly. So Professor Arka and I said in Beijing, the road is difficult. The future is light. That is my conclusion.
Thank you. Yes. Anyone else on that side? Yeah.
See, Isabella and I probably would like to thank everybody on behalf of Oxford. It was great to have the first one in Oxford in March, and it was wonderful to be here. Very sorry that Rana couldn't join us. And of course, we think this is just a great thing to be doing, and we look forward to the next one, and to keeping this relationship strong between ICS Oxford and ICS New Delhi. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think it has been a very rich experience, and the interesting thing, as I mentioned yesterday, is that the framework allowed us to have very focused thematic discussion, and I think we will maintain that framework, where history and international relations meet. Madhavi, it is 20th and 21st centuries.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the title. So so you have a futuristic perspective as well, and the past. So you're very right. The 1911, 1947, 1949, that kind of dividing lines we don't have. Now, some specific things. Steve, we have a group in Calcutta. Sobanlal Dr. Gupta led a group which has already gone into the Russian archives, new material. He has come out with 2 volumes on Comintern and India, and more volumes are in the making. And we should have him here to interact with us. We'll do that. And you're right, Tani. He has also, this Calcutta group has also explored Russian as well as the East European archives, particularly Berlin and the East European archives. And so on the Comintern, on the 20s, they have got a lot of new material, and they will have more. And they have, this is the Asiatic Society project on history, the Calcutta Asiatic Society. I think Atul's presentation today really opened up many possibilities. We have the Indian regional language works on China. We have occasionally thought we will do first a bibliography and then take up thematic studies, and particularly a study of perceptions from Indian perceptions of China and so on, seen by visitors from different parts of the country. Except that 60 to 70, 75, 76, that period, there have been lots of goings and comings between not only friendship groups, other kinds of groups also from regional centers. The momentum of the friendship activity revived between 76 and it continued till about 90. After 90, the business and state took over relations, and there was no need for the people-to-people exchange of that kind. It was risky to carry on friendship activity. I was quite active in some 69 onwards, in the most difficult days with Sundarlal. We were very active. Then when I found that it has become easy to carry on that activity, I completely withdrew. Okay, so even our own colleagues who have who come from different linguistic groups I think we should take interest in our publications. I haven't done, there are two important Odia writers who visited China. I supplied them 20 or 30 of my books to read before and after. I have been wanting to review, they have published their memoirs, their travelogues on China. 100 years later, those travelogues will have a Kamal sheet to analyze. But I wanted to review those two travelogues in China. It would have been, one of them died recently actually. And so I'm telling that to myself and to all the others who should look at their regional language material. So that's one point I thought I should say on this occasion. We have a trilateral, India, China, Russia trilateral. But unfortunately, we have not used that linkage for archival work and serious researches to be facilitated. We have, for the last 1 decade, we were one of the founders of that initiative, and now it's a big, trilateral part of BRICS and so on. This Russian Academy of Sciences, Institute of Eastern Studies, our institute, and the China Institute of International Studies. We are the three sort of nodal partners. So I think we will tell ourselves how to make this trilateral accessible or a medium of our researches, so that those of you who would like to go to explore the Russian archives or the Chinese archives and them to come here, we can use the trilateral forum as a research medium for that. I've been saying the same thing about VCIM also. Now the important thing about all these yesterday's papers, I think they really opened up lots of new interactional studies. The Chanhanshan project should be linked with the Thurners. There are many who are, we produced a book in honor of Alice Thurner. So that group is a dedicated group of friends of Alice Thurner and Daniel Thurner. And they had connections with that whole old radical social science group. And now that, and from Steve McKinnon to Ghosh, Arnav Ghosh, 40 years younger, I think we have a rich potential of really exploring the social science connections of the last, from Tagore to now, plus these, and therefore, this project, I don't know whether you all have got our set of materials on various projects going on in this institute. Our most prestigious and I think a very promising project is led by Madhavi and Nirmala Sharma, her colleague in this project, and archival materials on China in the National Archives of India. So we are documenting them, and some of the papers you saw are part of that. I think now we have to structure that program properly. Now, for example, INA. There is a group here and Calcutta and elsewhere who are working on INA. And many of your old project on Shanghai and Mumbai, I think that should be a PhD project now, who should go into the archives and pursue that. They did a pioneering work on that. So my suggestion is that yesterday's group of scholars should be in touch with each other. Kamal, Isabel, Madhavi, Steve, Nirmala, because I think, and there are many in China who are interested in doing that. In literature, I know a few whom I had sort of provided some Indian materials. Somebody worked on Mulak Raj Anand, Mulak Raj Anand's visit to China, and then Mulak Raj Anand's things were translated into Chinese. We haven't, and there are many such things, and many cultural delegations have gone to China. We have not followed up on that. So one concrete suggestion is that I think through Madhavi's group here, that Kamal, Madhavi, please coordinate with Steve, Isabel, and others globally to see how that project can flourish, and we will facilitate that from here, and I expect the same kind of support from China and other places. I think today the 62 related papers brought out many new possibilities. Last year, not last year, in 2012, we had number of activities on 50 years since 62. And Alka gave that presentation in Oxford. You haven't written it up, published yet. And some of that we saw today. I mean, how 62 is being sort of deconstructed, and many new ways of looking at 62 are emerging. And as Madhavi put it, it's a window to look at the world. And I was so upset about this history book not having 62. I spoiled his lunch, saying that I protest. You know that 62 was a turning point which changed the politics and economics of India forever. And in global context, the Cold War got a new momentum, and further complicated by the Sino-Soviet split. Therefore, in 20th century history, India-China War of 62 is very important. We can't ignore it. Even while we are trying to promote friendship, normalization, and subtly solidarity and so on, you can't ignore. You can't make a Chinese student unaware of something like that happening. And there should be more knowledge in China about how it affected India. And that dynamics came out so well in today's discussion. I think and the multiplicity of dimensions which Jonathan brought out. I think we have to continue this study. Now, finally, I think this group from Oxford, you saw two representatives here, and we saw many of them last year in Oxford, and we have been in interaction with them for many years. This is a new breed of scholars who are as anti-colonial as the rest of us, okay, and as open to a new wave of scholarly re-examination of categories, terms, frameworks, and that's why we interact. In the US or UK, the several interactions that we have, and Steve McKinnon is from my generation. We belong to the same generation, and we have fought against these categories and frameworks for 40 years. And we are so glad that we have a new global partnership in this new scholarship. Therefore, and I find now many in China who belong to the same kind of scholarship. Open, critical, not afraid of their present government policies or government approaches. We would like to seek truth. And we are prepared to, as you said, as Bhutani said very well, revise our opinions when we find new evidence, and we fearlessly pursue truth. And we believe that that kind of scholarship is good for humankind, for human development, for global transformation, for creating a just world, that kind of scholarship. And as Madhuri put it, a superficial diplomatic scholarship within quotes to please this group or that group, or you have scores to settle, or you have interests to pursue. I mean, there will be a politics underlying all scholarship, but let that be clear, let that not be hindered by the pursuit of truth. And this is why we have teamed up with Oxford, and we would I think we will have the resources to host. If you host one, we'll host the other. Even if you don't host one, we'll still invite you here. So this framework, and we'll hope we can all meet in China also in this. Therefore, I think it has been a very fruitful 2 days. And now I invite Alka to say the last word.
Well, that's just going to be very simply thank you. But just to endorse completely and wholeheartedly what Professor Mohanty has just said, and kind of views that came out from the other distinguished participants earlier. We at the Institute had started a research project a couple of years back. One was, of course, which has been mentioned, Madhuri's project, which is on archival research. He means took that off. Yeah, okay, now. So one has been ongoing for now nearly 3 years, which is Madhuri's project, which is looking at archival materials on China in Indian archives. And the other, which was started more recently, which Mr. Rappai is spearheading, which is basically in its first phase, where we are attempting to document just about everything that has been recorded on all aspects related to the boundary dispute. Now, this is of course still in its infancy, but we've gotten underway when Rana approached us, and we found that this whole new world of collaboration was opening up, and we therefore would like to eventually team up with you and our counterparts in the Academy of Social Sciences to take this forward, because it's quite clear, and as we thought we were getting to the end and finishing up with 62, and bang, it comes back with a whole new dimension. So clearly it's something that needs to be now taken up very differently and in a much wider context. And we hope that the Institute here, because the kind of depth we would require can be available only in universities and institutes. And we would like to bring the synergies of all these places together. So that's where I would commit the Institute to being a very, very staunch part of this project, and so let's keep the interactions going. Just quickly, a word of thanks to everybody here around. To begin with, of course, the missing Rana, and he is in many ways been really pushing this through right since a year ago, and really sad that he couldn't be here. But I'm sure you will give him the entire report and tell him what a resounding success it has been, and we look forward to the next stage in this. To all the participants who have who have gathered here and who've really given us an enthralling 1.5 days of their valuable research and insights. I think we were talking over lunch, and it really strikes us as how things can completely get renewed once you see it from a slightly different position. So thank you all very much for opening up those vistas, especially for the youngsters who are attending. Thanks to this team that actually helped in the institute. Atul, of course, was a presenter and a participant, but I requested him to take charge of organizing it. So he and this great team of Suraj and Kamini, who are both here, I think. Suraj, where is he? Okay, these two who have really done, and I think we should give both of them. They ran and they mailed and they jumped and just about everything that was necessary to put this thing together has been to two of them, but of course backup provided by Peter and our office. So thanks to Atul and this group, which really gives us the sinews to put this all together. And thank you to the entire ICS community, which is, as usual, my greatest moral support. So thank you all very much.
And I'm particularly grateful because I arrived just like in the same flight practically. I saw the car, the card waiting for them. So I also came at the bus. Thank you very much.